All right, got it down. I'm gonna turn it off and see if it comes right back on. Off?
Lights are maybe on.
Okay. Fire that up, there we go.
It holds at least enough charge to restart itself.
There we go.
That's a huge improvement.
So it's not bad. Welcome to another episode of the Bad Ideas Garage. This is Steven, and I'm going to be giving you a tour and a review of this lovely 2006 Suzuki Aerio SX all-wheel drive. Now, with many cars in the Bad Ideas Garage, this also has a very fun story. So stay tuned to our episode today to learn about that story and a little bit of information about this Suzuki.
Still drives.
And stops.
And it stops.
Now, Suzuki has not been making cars in the United States for about a decade now. I believe it was in 2012 was when they decided to pull out of the American market. Towards the end of their run, they started doing weird things like rebranding Daewoo's and Chevy products as Suzuki's, and some of their own internal products were not quite meeting the American market. And there are some quirks and features, as Doug DeMuro would say, about this car that says, yeah, we were really trying, but again, kind of missing the mark. This car, the Suzuki Aerio, this is a global car, and this is a car that they imported into the United States. This car was known as the Suzuki Liana. If you are familiar with Top Gear, with the star in the reasonably priced car, where they put a star in a Suzuki Liana. It was a front-wheel drive, a manual, and it was a sedan. This obviously is not of any of those, and they put them around the racetrack. So I kind of feel like a big deal when I'm driving around in this car. This particular car has a really interesting story. This actually belonged to my sister. This is one of her first purchases as an adult, was to buy herself this car, and she did, and I'm very proud of her for it. And she drove this car for quite some time with her partner, and they absolutely love this car. And what happened was that they drove this car until they got a more modern car, and sadly this car sat for a little bit. And so I got a message from my sister a couple weeks ago saying, hey, remember that Suzuki that you said if we ever went to sell it, you want it? And I was like, yeah, that's a long time ago. She said, well, we're moving out of our apartment. We're not taking this car with us. Please come get it. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. I was like, when do you need to get it? And she's like, well, in like a couple days from now. And I'm like, oh boy, okay. I'm also, I teach, I run a business, and then we had a snowstorm. So up in the Portland area, they had a snowstorm. And so long story short, we went up and we got it. And when we first saw this car, it was not in the best of condition. It had been sitting for a little bit, and this is no judgment of my sister at all, but it had been sitting for a little bit because there were some running issues that it was having, and so it sat for a little bit. All right, so here it is, all jumped in its element. Fire it right up, right, Dale? So my sister had this car since about 2014, and thankfully she gave me a fat stack of paperwork showing that she continually maintained it. And that's actually the way that we can tell that this car actually does run really, really well. We also pulled out the spark plugs and took a look at them, and they are super duper clean. Spark plugs, you can tell if the engine's running hot, if the engine's burning oil, etc. And these had a little bit of carbon buildup, which is to be expected. This car has 150,000 miles on it, so it was really well taken care of. And it does run really, really well. I'll show you some footage of that a little bit later of this car running. It does run really well. This car is really unique because, again, it is a hatchback, and also it has all-wheel drive. A little quick search in the forum showed that the all-wheel drive system in this car does not particularly work well, but it's really weird and it's quirky, and that's what we like. Alrighty, now let's take a walk around this car. This one has a little bit of body damage, but I love the way that the back looks. The rest of this car, I mean, it looks okay. It's got some funky things to it. These headlights were really yellow when we first got them, but once we had it detailed, this car actually looked really, really good. Again, this one is not perfect whatsoever, but the body is actually pretty straight. And the inside of this car, it is pretty sparing when it comes to features. So this is the premium wagon. Yes, this is the premium edition, but it doesn't have cruise control, which I find to be very, very odd. It does have power door locks. I don't have a key fob, so you stick the key in and it unlocks the doors. It does have power door locks, power windows. They all work. It has heated mirrors, which work really well. And the rest of this car is, pretty standard. Stereo system actually works pretty well, and this is their attempt, I guess, at automatic climate control. So if you do put on auto, it does work pretty well. Again, the stereo system works really well. I really like that it says WMA player. I haven't seen that in a very, very long time. What else? I mean, there's a little multifunction display up there that tells you your time and your temperature. This one, unfortunately, is an automatic. There's an overdrive off and on switch. Never really pressed that. There's a storage cubby. There's more storage over there. And then there are these buttons. Not sure why those buttons. They're just blanks, as well as power port. But those buttons, maybe they were used in the sedan. This particular interior, there's one little tiny rip underneath that floor mat. Yes, I know it's a TDI floor mat. I found them in my garage. They're going to go in this car. This car is vastly, vastly cleaner than when we first got it. It's not quite perfect, but it's doable. Most of the major issues were all taken care of by Rolly. He did a really good job. My neighbor, which is great. There's actually really good leg room back here. I've sat in the back of this car, and then back here, there's a lot of really good storage back here. All of this area, the seats go down. This is really, really good. There's just a lot of storage in this car. Up front, this has a 155 horsepower, I believe. This is a 2.3 liter four-cylinder. I love the way that it sounds. It revs really quickly. You can see some of the all-wheel drive stuff back in there. But yeah, Suzuki had several engines that they put in these cars, and this is the one, I think it's the biggest one that they had. Pretty simple design. This one has a timing chain, which is great, so you don't have to deal with timing belts. There's a couple of pieces of evidence that this car was taken care of. Les Schwab is a local place that we have here in Oregon, and new braking system, some suspension bits, and a new battery. All right, here we go. Woo! Yeah. Like a mini. How's that gas smell, Dale?
Poorly. It smells of bad gas. Quite struggling. It really needs some fresh gas.
Trying to see if this is stabilizing with the engine running. I don't think it's going to be stable enough just because of the vibrations of this. Alrighty, we're going to take this car on a drive this morning. So what I'm going to do is turn on my fancy heated mirrors. This car came with heated mirrors, and also, let me see here, turn on the defrost, turn that to auto, so that's pretty fancy. Crank that heat up, and yeah, put this window down, and we're going to give this a drive. So first things when you drive this car, first things very apparent is that when it's idling low, a lot of things rattle. A lot of it is that the hood latch actually rattles. I thought that there was some pretty serious engine problems when I first started to drive this car, and it actually was just a rattle from the hood latch. So I thought that there was something really wrong with the car, but then I pressed down on the hood, totally fine. The seats are pretty comfortable. Driving around in regular traffic like this, things are very easy to manage. You have really good visibility in this car. I know the windows are a little foggy still. Thankfully the front defogged almost immediately. But yeah, this car, it's actually quite fun to drive. These cars are really weird, and now that I have a Suzuki, I notice them a lot of other places. I will say that the next generation of this car, the Suzuki SX4, was a much better looking car. This car is kind of an oddball looking car. It also just does not seem very refined as a car compared to the SX4. I've actually been in an SX4 before. They're not very expensive. You can get them in all-wheel drive. You can get them in a manual transmission. This car also came in a manual transmission. You could get this car as a wagon, a manual transmission, and all-wheel drive. This one unfortunately has this pretty interesting 4-speed automatic gearbox that is not the best. It's kind of disappointed because this engine does like to rev. You know, you put your foot down and it makes some nice noise. All of the controls in this car are laid out very, very nicely, very simple. A lot of new cars have menus that you have to go into this menu to turn that on. Even like modern cars with heated seats, you have to go into a menu. This car, everything is just there. There's a couple buttons. It's like, here's your climate control, you know, here is your radio control. It's all very easy. So there's a pull almost to the red line. 6,500, yeah, about 6,500 RPM is the red line, and went straight through first gear. Sounded good. It's actually kind of felt fun. It's definitely not fast. Brakes in this car are adequate, very adequate. Good feel, linear, very linear feeling brakes. Nothing overly exciting about them. But back on that throttle, gosh, I wish this car had a manual transmission. This car would be a lot more fun with a manual transmission. Okay, that is a lot of noise and not a lot of go. And on the brakes, on the brakes, on the brakes. The brakes do have about 10 or 15,000 miles on them. They're pulsing a little bit. It's probably because this car sat. I did find out that this car sat since about January of 2019. That was a fun surprise because when I took it into the quick lube place, they were like, yeah, you've put 200 miles on this car since the last oil change. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, the car sat for a little bit longer than I thought, but yeah, let's do a speed run here. Let's see what this thing can do. Here we go. And finally, we come to the end of another episode of the Bad Ideas Garage. After driving around this car for a little bit today, it's kind of growing on me. It is a little loud on the interior, but it's an economy car. That's kind of what is to be expected. The rattling has been very consistent. It's actually getting a little bit better as we work through some of the gas that we now know is very old, not just kind of old, but very old. It's as we work through it, it's getting a little bit better. Put some non-ethanol premium in it, helped it pep right up. Suzuki made some really cool cars. A lot of people know Suzuki because of maybe the Samurai. You know the Suzuki Samurai, which is a legendary off-road vehicle. Maybe you know Suzuki from motorcycles, but they do make some really, really cool cars. And I will say that this is a really cool car. It's lacking a couple basic things like cruise control, but the way that the engine sound is actually really cool, and it revs really, really fast, and I just love it. So this car is sadly not going to be with us for very much longer. It is going to be for sale here pretty quick. We want to make sure that it goes to somebody that would really like to have a unique commuter car. After driving around the car, I feel comfortable driving it. And just driving it doesn't feel like it's going to implode. And I looked. If I wanted to go fix a couple things on this car, like the bumpers, they're actually easy to find. I thought it was going to be really difficult to find that, and the EVAP canister that needs to be replaced in this car. It's actually not hard to find. You can find them at junkyards. You can still find some of the parts new. There are things like the airbag light in this car. No idea why it's on, and not quite sure about who I would have to diagnose that. But overall, this is a really cool car, and I'm glad that we had a chance to drive it. I'm glad that we had a chance to revive it, because who knows where this car would have ended up otherwise. So again, thanks for listening to another great episode of the Bad Ideas Garage. Make sure and like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you like this video, and we'll see you next time.
No problem.
Not bad. Automatic, look at that.
It has an auxiliary jack too.
Ooh, it's got an aux cable. Very nice.
And it can play with WMA files.
WMA files, alrighty.
That right there, that is quality. Oh look, you got glasses.
Oh, glasses came with it. Look at luxury features, heated mirrors. Alrighty. Now, rattling is definitely the hood latch and not anything else, thank goodness. But yeah, it's ready for this glory. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. bad gas and everything.
Yeah, it really needs some gas.
Oh. Okay. No lights?
No lights.
No lights, okay.
It's not that, it's not that high end.
Wait.
Radio works.
A little bit of religious radio, make me feel very inspired. All right. The heat's actually getting kind of warm.
There's a CDR in here.
Ooh. What are those, Dale?
It's been a while. Let's find out what she was listening to. Come on. Start playing the track.
All American Rejects. See if these mirrors work. Okay, those mirrors are moving. Is that mirror moving?
Yep.
Okay. And look at this for a luxury feature. Overdrive like. Turn that overdrive on and off like it's nobody's business. There we go. Little All-American Rejects.
Heater works.
There we go. Heater does work. Do we dare try the air conditioning?
It's on.
Turn the air conditioning.
It's definitely working. You can hear the engine laboring.
Oh, yeah. Engine's laboring and oh boy, that's actually really cold.
Well, it is cold outside too.
Dale, the sensible one.
It is 44 degrees outside.
Okay, this says 49 degrees. Dale says 44 degrees. That actually is probably feeling like it's actually kicking on something.